Celia Park liked to say that her houseboat smelled of cedar shelves and lake mist in equal measure. The two-room craft bobbed near the Fremont Bridge, tethered to shore by a weathered gangplank that served as both sidewalk and welcome mat for the floating branch of the Seattle Public Library. Mornings, she unlocked the Dutch door, propped it with a potted fern, and let coffee-scented air mingle with the chatter of gulls. Regulars, kayakers, liveaboards, tech workers on electric scooters slipped inside for a borrowed paperback, or simply to sit in the sunshine that puddled on the reading settee. The arrangement wasn't in any official library handbook, but the city had granted Celia a tiny budget and a big smile, and no one had regretted it since. The houseboat's checkout system was handwritten in a ledger, partly because Celia liked ink smudges, and partly because damp air killed most electronics. Patrons jotted their names and a return estimate. Then they tucked the book into a knapsack and paddled or pedaled away. When items floated back, Celia stamped them with a rubber loon and slid them onto the correct shelf, ready for the next borrower. Nothing more dramatic than a coffee stain ever happened, until Monday of Seafair Week. That morning, veterinarian Rosa Mejia arrived breathless, returning Agatha Christie's The Mysterious Mr. Quinn. "Loved it," Rosa said, "except I think your copy's haunted. Pages 53 through 57 are gone." Celia turned the book over. Sure enough, a neat slice where the signatures had been lifted. Rosa blushed and pulled out $20, but Celia shooed her hand away, filing the incident under odd but not alarming. Odd escalated to hair-raising by Thursday. 4 more books came back with surgical strikes, always 5 pages missing, always in the middle. A children's encyclopedia on parrots, a battered copy of Cyrano de Bergerac, a knitting pattern book, and a biography of Ada Lovelace all bore identical wounds. Celia fanned the doctored volumes across her reading table, feeling as if Sherlock himself had invited her to play. She located the ledger entries. Each damaged book had been borrowed by a different patron, yet all 5 had been checked out on the same day 3 weeks earlier. The common denominator was only the timestamp, 3:15 p.m. To Celia, that meant a single visitor had strolled in, taken a stack, and distributed them to friends or accomplices, or maybe never left the dock. At sunset, she brewed oolong and began sleuthing. The missing pages weren't random at all. Someone had removed exactly 1,327 words from the 5 books combined. When Celia arranged photocopies in numeric order, murmuring apologies to each mutilated title, she discovered that every 15th word formed a coherent message. If you want the past to disappear, put 2 million in untraceable crypto before the autumn equinox. Further instructions to follow. It was blackmail delivered via a jigsaw of literary corpses. Celia's pulse skipped. Who in Seattle was worth squeezing for that amount? Her mind leapt to Arthur Leland, the magnetic CEO of Nebulae, an augmented reality behemoth headquartered a short kayak ride across Lake Union. Leland was magazine cover famous, young, bearded, rumored to have slept in a hammock during the company's early years. He also happened to be Nebulae Library Fund's newest donor, which explained the glossy invitation Celia had received to a reception on Friday night. She hadn't planned to attend. Cocktail dresses didn't mix well with outboard motors, but now curiosity nudged her aboard the streetcar to South Lake Union. The Nebulae lobby resembled the inside of a glacier, all blue-white glass and hushed waterfalls. Celia traded her life jacket windbreaker for a borrowed shawl, pinned on a name tag, and drifted among canapes. She spotted Arthur by the koi pond, laughing too loudly at a joke. His right hand clutched a phone. His left worried an envelope so frayed it looked weeks old. Every few minutes he'd pull the envelope to eye level, grimace, then tuck it away. On an impulse, Celia sidled nearer and pretended to admire the fish. "What do you think, Celia? Gold or orange?" The question came from Maya Brooks, Nebuli's chief of staff, and more importantly, a patron of Celia's library since its roving book cart days. Maya's tone was breezy, but her eyes flicked toward Arthur's battered envelope. "Definitely orange," Celia replied, though the koi were clearly red. "Maya, can I ask, has Arthur been off lately?" Maya sighed. "He got some mail that rattled him. Won't share details. But I've seen carbon dust on his hands, the kind from newspaper print, and he started carrying scissors in his laptop sleeve. Scissors, Celia. That man can barely be trusted with a butter knife." Celia's mind hummed. Scissors, newsprint, envelopes. She pictured Leland methodically cutting messages from library books so he could... what? Reassemble them into ransom notes? No, he'd be the victim, not the culprit. Which meant someone close to him had crafted the puzzle and was now feeding him further instructions, likely inside that very envelope. When the reception music swelled, Celia lifted 2 glasses of sparkling cider and pretended to stumble, splashing a few drops on Arthur's shoes. While dabbing with a napkin, she glimpsed the envelope, written in Sharpie, pages 31-35 next. She jerked upright, mumbling apologies, but her mind blazed with new information. The blackmailer planned a second installment. Back on her houseboat, Celia compiled a list of possible suspects: disgruntled ex-employees, venture capital sharks, or data privacy protesters. Yet one name circled back again and again: Jordan Fisk, Nebuli's former code architect, who'd resigned after alleging that Arthur stole his ideas. Press coverage had died down, replaced by stories of Jordan's kayaking sabbatical in the San Juans. But Celia remembered him browsing her mystery section last month, leaving with a stack at precisely 3:15 p.m. She hadn't noted it then. She did now. Saturday dawned damp and hopeful. Celia packed a decoy. The Tempest in a trade paperback edition, whose pages 31-35 she had already photocopied and replaced with blank paper, sprinkled with invisible ink, the lemon juice variety that revealed itself when warmed. In its margins she wrote, "Meet me where the bridge casts a shadow at 8, or the truth goes viral." If Jordan, or anyone, filched those sheets, they'd think the invisible ink was just watermark until a hairdryer or the back of an espresso machine brought it to life. At 2:55 p.m, Celia placed the Tempest on her staff picks stand. At 3:15 on the dot, a tall figure in a rain shell eased through the doorway. Sunglasses in Seattle were a giveaway. So was the way he scanned for witnesses. Jordan Fisk signed the ledger with a flourish and tucked the Tempest under his arm. Celia counted to 10, grabbed her bike, and followed at a discreet distance along the waterfront. Jordan crossed to Gas Works Park, circled a cluster of kite flyers, and crouched behind a graffiti-splashed concrete tower. He opened the book, slipped out to the targeted pages, and fed the rest to a trash can. Celia's heart pinched at the sacrilege, but stayed focused. Jordan folded the pages into his jacket, then used a silver lighter to melt the adhesive stamp off his library card slip, erasing evidence. Finally, he headed toward a moored speedboat that looked more Silicon Valley than maritime Seattle. Celia dialed Maya while pedaling furiously. "He's en route. Does Arthur know the drop location?" "Not yet," Maya whispered. but he left the office clutching $2 million worth of crypto keys on a USB. Meet us under the Fremont Bridge. I'm texting Arthur now to stall. Twilight draped the canal when Celia arrived. Maya was there, along with Arthur, who looked pale enough to be mistaken for fog. I can't go to the police, he blurted. There were oversights back in beta testing. Jordan can ruin me. Celia held up a hand. We don't need sirens. We need daylight, metaphorically speaking. Right on cue, Jordan's speedboat nosed beneath the bascule leaves of the bridge, its lights dim. Arthur stepped forward, USB raised, but Celia signalled him to wait. She had slipped a travel hairdryer into her tote. Now she plugged it into a dockside outlet and trained the heat on one of the blank pages Jordan had discarded in the trash. The invisible ink browned, revealing Celia's trap message, as well as a second unintended line. Proprietary code fragments written in Jordan's unmistakable shorthand. Proof that he was stealing intellectual property, not simply silencing it. Jordan cut the engine but stayed aboard, voice carrying across the water. Artie, you've got something for me? Arthur swallowed. Before I hand it over, I need assurance the originals are destroyed. Jordan laughed. My leverage doesn't evaporate that easily. Nor does mine, Celia called, lifting the browned page high so the dim walkway lights illuminated the code. I think Nebula's legal team, shoot, maybe the FBI, would love to see how you've been smuggling classified algorithms out of headquarters. Jordan's gaze flicked from Celia's page to Arthur's frozen posture. He revved the engine, pivoting to flee. But Maya, who'd spent summers crewing sailboats, tossed a dock line like a lasso. It snagged Jordan's propeller. The engine sputtered, died, and the boat thudded softly against a piling. When Jordan tried to clamber onto the dock, Arthur surprised everyone, himself included, by blocking the ladder. It ends tonight, Jordan. We both know the code was a joint effort. Instead of lawsuits, you went for extortion. Jordan's shoulders sagged. You would have buried me and taken the company public without me. You quit, Arthur snapped, then caught Celia's eye and lowered his voice. But maybe I should have listened. He turned to Celia. What happens now? Do I call the police? Celia considered the damp pages fluttering in her grasp. Cozy mysteries favoured reconciliation over incarceration, didn't they? But some wrongs required firmer bookmarks. Call them, she said gently, and then call your board. Transparency beats leverage every time. By the time red and blue lights strobed across the canal, Celia had retrieved the mutilated books from Jordan's backpack. Their innards could still be restitched, notes erased, bindings reglued. She tucked them in her tote, already planning which volunteers at the main branch would help with book surgery. A week later, Celia perched on the houseboat deck, mending the mysterious Mr. Quinn with archival tape. Arthur stood opposite her in jeans and a contrite expression. Nebula's board had suspended him while they investigated. Rather than sulk, he'd volunteered as Celia's page replacement assistant, aligning signatures with surprising dexterity. Feels good, he said, smoothing a crease. Doing something straightforward with my hands. Celia nodded. Books are honest. If you cut them, they show the wound. She met his gaze. People too, sometimes. I plan to own up to everything, he said quietly. No more envelopes. Maya emerged from below deck carrying cocoa. Repair crew, break time. She poured 3 mugs. Oh, and Celia, the city approved your request for an outdoor reading dock. Seems a certain philanthropist made an anonymous donation. Arthur flushed. Celia pretended not to notice. turning instead to a stack of fresh patrons waiting on the planks. She inhaled cedar and lake mist, then opened the Dutch door wide. The floating library's shelves were slightly thinner, its mysteries a bit thicker, but balance had been restored. One page, one patron, one second chance at a time.